focus of right now. Wilder, Fury 2, here we go.
With this, well, I'm sure most of you have heard already that Deontay Wilder has had surgery on his bicep and he's reflecting on his loss. This is the most we've heard from Wilder since that second Tyson Fury fight. He was quoted as saying, "The recovery is going well. I'm in therapy. I ended up injuring it in my last fight somewhere up in there, but everything is going great with it. That's another thing I'm just focusing on, recovery, getting myself back to full health. I can't work out right now. That's what I'm looking forward to. Once I get healed with my arm, I'm just looking forward to working out, being able to do the things I love to do." Everything that happened, it happened the last 15 minutes until the fight, Wilder said. There's a lot of things that went on. There's a lot of things that I don't even want to talk about at this moment in time. I'm still reflecting on certain things, and I can't believe the things that happened to me, and they happened to me at that point in my career.
What happened?
Days after his loss, Wilder said he believed his elaborate and gaudy ring outfit was so heavy that it wore down his legs as he made his way into the ring at the MGM Grand Garden Arena. It's easy to understand what type of person Deontay Wilder was at that moment in time. Even when I took off my mask, the things that I was doing, I've been in this sport for a very long time. People have seen me fight all over the world for a very long time. So people automatically know who I am, know how I should look. People that know boxing know that wasn't Deontay Wilder that night.
Oh, really?
Here we go.
Well, that wasn't Deontay Wilder?
Is that Marcellus?
No, I mean, it looked like Deontay to me, but better still, they know that wasn't Deontay Wilder that night. I was a zombie that night. What still puzzles Wilder is that instead of using his normally aggressive strategy, he was in retreat against Fury, who came in at a robust 273 pounds, 42 pounds more than Wilder. You don't go backwards, you go forward. And that night, I wasn't myself, said Wilder, who invoked the clause for the third fight, which he believes will happen by the end of 2020. When boxing returns, Wilder says he will have some new faces in his corner. We've been having a lot of people reach out, Wilder said, but you just have to be careful with that because people just see this time, see publicity. They want to be able to say that they was the name that came in and stuff like that, and just look at it in a different way. You have to be careful about the people you bring around. During a pro career that started in 2008, Wilder has been trained by JD's and Mark Breland. Wilder didn't speak specifically on their status. "I'm looking to bring someone in, for sure," Wilder said. "We don't have it down yet, but I'm definitely bringing 2 people in. But we'll see what happens. I think we've got a great team that's going to be formed."
Okay.
Reference to George Foreman reaching out to Deontay Wilder. He said, "We talked about things that went on in his career, good and bad. A lot of different tricks of the trade that used to happen. Certain things that he saw in the fight, and a lot of knowledge that he applied to me," Wilder said. "He was telling me how he wanted to show me some methods of strengthening certain parts of my body and stuff like that. He definitely dropped a couple of gems down for me, and it was good to hear." Wilder insists his mind and body are completely mended, and he now looks forward to evening the score with Fury and regaining his title. He knows that wasn't me. Everyone knows that wasn't me,
Okay.
Wilder said. "We'll show it, like I said. There's a time and a place for it all, and I'll reveal a lot of things, but I'm looking forward to it. Actually, I can't wait to give the people what they want to see." You sure about that? Because what the people want to see is an undisputed heavyweight title fight, and you're standing in the way of that. You know, Tyson Fury, he's caught wind of these comments from Deontay Wilder, that wasn't him.
No.
It wasn't him that night.
No.
And to that, Tyson Fury was quoted as saying, "Keep letting yourself down, Bronze Bomber. It's sad. It was you I smashed. That's the truth. Just admit it and move on. It's just a fight. You win some, you lose some. That's boxing, pal." I don't know if anybody sent Tyson Fury the memo, but Deontay Wilder has been anything but a gracious individual, anything but a gracious champion. He wasn't gracious in victory, so why would he be gracious in defeat?
He wouldn't.
Not the least bit surprised that things have worked out the way that they've worked out, that Wilder's making excuses, and Wilder's fans are also making excuses for him. From the quote-unquote long count that was too long in the first fight,
Remember that?
attempting to get Paulie Malignaggi fired due to his professional take on the match, that as far as Paulie was concerned, Fury won the fight. Wilder didn't like that. He didn't handle that like a champion, now did he?
Of course not.
To Wilder's immediate comments after the second fight, that it was his costume that costed him the match. It weakened his legs, and that's why he went out there and looked the way that he looked, unless we forget. He also tried to accuse one of the Durrell brothers, I forget which, of being in cahoots with Tyson Fury's corner in unison with Mark Breland.
What?
Mark Breland, who's been with Deontay Wilder for as long as I can remember.
What?
Apparently all these different guys were working against him. It's according to Wilder. That's not according to me. That's what he was hinting at immediately after the fight. And now what are we hearing? We're hearing that he hurt his left hand at some point in the match. We're hearing that he had bicep surgery. We're hearing about snakes in the grass, additions to the camp, and that's on top of Wilder's fans making excuses for him. Glovegate, all of that. Even though Deontay Wilder himself, even now, has made no mention of Tyson Fury's gloves. I mean, he's not saying that there was anything suspicious about Tyson Fury's gloves or his punching power. Wilder himself addressed none of this.
Zero.
But this is what his fans would have me and you believe.
Costed him the fight.
A conspiracy theory that came from a YouTuber who doesn't even normally cover boxing, and this YouTuber's smoking gun isn't even the footage from the second fight where Wilder got knocked out. The footage that he used to drive his point home is the footage from the first fight. After the first fight, what did Wilder say?
You can't punch. I don't know what you talking about, knocking somebody in the second round. You ain't never knocked nobody in no second round. You got pillows for fists. That's why I kept running through you. Because you can't punch.
It was never going to be simple. It was never going to be honest. It was never going to be gracious or classy. Not from this guy and not from these guys that make up his fan base. It was never going to just be that Wilder lost the fucking fight, and that's just what happened. No conspiracies, no excuses, no crying, no bitching, no moaning. It was never going to be that way. That's why I'm not the least bit surprised that things have worked out the way that they've worked out. We're now hearing that Deontay Wilder doesn't recognize Tyson Fury as the reigning champion. He's got to beat Wilder one more time before that happens, but that didn't stop him from recognizing Andy Ruiz as a champion when he beat Joshua in the first fight. But of course.
What?
What applies to Wilder doesn't apply to everybody else. I mean, this is the kind of skewed perception, the kind of bubble that this guy lives in.
And that ain't news.
And this ain't new. The most revealing revelation when it comes to Deontay Wilder's recent comments is that he plans on bringing two guys on board. Two new faces to help him prepare for the third installment, the third fight. And given Wilder's comments about snakes being in the grass, that needing to be reconciled, not specifying what the role of Mark Breland and JD's is going to be moving forward in reference to whatever two guys he brings on board, that's about the most news you can derive from out of all these recent comments, all this stuff that Wilder said. Because the rest of that stuff is stuff that me and you already knew. That this guy, he wasn't gracious in victory, so why the fuck would he be gracious in defeat? I was expecting these excuses. I don't know if you were. I was. Whether they were from Wilder or Wilder's fans. This was always going to be the case. When you talk that much shit, and it all blows up in your face, you got no choice but to make excuses afterwards. You got no choice. What else are you gonna do? You know, on one end, we're hearing that Wilder might be taking a step in the right direction, that whatever Mark Breland and JD's have had you doing so far, it hasn't rounded you out as a fighter, as you are greatly lacking in many areas. That you got power, you got that, but you ain't got much else.
Outside of that.
So, it is more or less a step in the right direction to bring maybe one or two more faces on board to help you out. Thing is that doesn't necessarily guarantee your success in the third outing, as it seems like Wilder is still not dealing with the situation. He's disassociating himself from the loss and from the fight. And if you can't admit
to yourself
that was you out there that got manhandled, that was you that got beat. Tyson Fury, he already broke you down, and if you are to rebuild yourself from that thereafter, you have to admit what went wrong. You have to admit that it wasn't the costume, and it wasn't Mark Breland or Anthony Durrell.
None of that.
Or anything else. That if you could not deal with this individual, it was due to your limitations,
Yep.
your own shortcomings,
Yep.
your drawbacks as a fighter, that you got power, buckets of power, but what you ain't got is buckets of boxing acumen, buckets of boxing skill, because you're the guy that was running around telling everybody that when they got power like you don't need skill, and you found out the hard way. That's not true, and power alone is not enough. It's not always going to bail you out the situation. If you can't admit that to yourself, I don't know what's gonna happen. I don't know what you can do. And they're planning on having this third installment before 2020 is out, assuming they can. But if they do, is that enough time for Wilder to become a more well-rounded fighter when he would be in an experimental phase with 2 new faces, 2 new trainers trying to teach an old dog new tricks? Because in case you're not already aware, Wilder's in his mid-30s. Well, I know Wilder's not the oldest heavyweight running around, but he's been fighting the same way for the longest time. He's never been a tactician. He's never been a strategist.
Never.
Wilder wins most every single fight the same way every time. And when you've been doing this, and now you're in your mid-30s, you just suffered your first professional loss.
What now?
Are you actually adaptable enough to make certain subtle tweaks, certain subtle changes, and stick to that kind of a game plan when your game plan, largely in part, has been the same game plan for, 40-something fights? Do you know how to change? Can you? Regardless of who's in your corner. Because ultimately, it's going to be you in the ring. And it's going to be you that has to implement the changes. They can tell you what to do, but you're the one that's got to do it.
Can you?
It's not like Deontay Wilder's training right now. It's not like he's working on things as we speak. According to Deontay Wilder, he's recovering from surgery. So this extra time off
Ain't been used.
it hasn't actually been to his benefit as of yet. Because as of yet, this guy's recovering from surgery. Apparently, he had bicep surgery.
Okay.
That in and of itself accents Wilder's physical condition, his age, the wear and tear that all fighters suffer over time. It's not the first time that Wilder's had to have surgery to his bicep. One of them.
It's not.
What's this guy had? Something like 6, 7 surgeries?
Just about, yeah.
You run around telling people that wasn't you out there. That wasn't you.
Then who was it?
What that communicates to me is that weeks later, after the fight, you still haven't come to terms with what happened. You still haven't dealt with it psychologically. If anything, you're distancing yourself from it, disassociating yourself with it by stating that wasn't you. So how do you fix a problem when you won't even address it? How do you fix a problem when you don't address that there even is a problem? It's $1 million question. In other heavyweight news, Dillian Whyte had this to say about Joseph Parker. He says, instead of prancing in your kitchen, fight someone credible. He's quoted as saying, I've beat him up already, and I'll beat him up again. Joseph Parker shouldn't be struggling with guys like Shondell Winters. Who the hell is that guy? No one has ever heard of him. Instead of prancing around his kitchen, he should go fight someone credible like Derek Chisora or Oscar Rivas. I tried to fight Joseph Parker before we even fought, when he was a champion. He didn't want to fight me, but he knows that fighting me now, he'll get a big payday. I fight Joseph Parker again, I will knock him out. I went into the fight with a broken hand and a broken rib, and I still destroyed him. I didn't outbox him. I beat him and dominated him. Imagine if I go in when I'm 100%, no injury. What's gonna happen? The left hand was broken. It was the hand that I knocked him down with. Joseph Parker has had a lot of opportunities and he's wasted them. Simple as that. He had an opportunity to beat Anthony Joshua and he fought like a coward in the fight. He had an opportunity to beat me. He done all right, but he just talks crap. I'm sick of these heavyweights. If you don't really want it, don't call my name. When I wanted it, they didn't want to fight me. You know, I don't see what's stopping Joseph Parker from going in there and fighting Michael Hunter.
That's a good fight.
I don't see what's stopping him from doing something like that. You know, Dillian Whyte, for all intents and purposes, once boxing resumes, will go ahead with that Povetkin fight. And I think what makes the most sense in that situation is for Joseph Parker to make an appearance, a reappearance, against someone interesting, someone better than Shondell Winters. And I happen to think that a Parker versus Hunter fight is a good fight. I don't see what's stopping Joseph from having that kind of fight once boxing resumes.
Yeah.
I mean, Alex Lapine, Shondell Winters. What does beating those guys get you? Where does beating those guys get you, you know?
Nowhere.
You want to call those fights tune-up fights? Fine.
Go ahead.
Call them tune-up fights. You've tuned up already. It's time for things to get serious. A little more serious than they can get when you're fighting that quality of competition. I happen to think that Parker versus Hunter is a good fight. And at this point, given the kind of guys that Joseph Parker's been fighting, I'd settle for Parker versus the loser of Chisora versus Usyk. Because, odds are, whoever the loser of that fight is, there'll likely still be a more interesting opponent choice than either Shondell Winters was or Alex Lapie was. Look, once boxing resumes, most anyone and everyone is going to have to make up for lost time. And while Joseph Parker's a young guy, he cannot continue to squander his youth, his best years, fighting those kinds of guys. If you want to be involved in serious situations, you got to take risks.
Especially now.
Maybe you go in there with Michael Hunter. Maybe you go in there with the loser of Chisora versus Usyk. And I say the loser because the winner will have a title shot. They might not want to waste any time on Joseph. So maybe you get the loser of that fight. Or maybe you go in there with a young up-and-comer like a Filip Hrgovic, somebody like that. That makes for an interesting situation. I imagine an environment to where if boxing resumes before the year is out, maybe sometime midsummer or late summer or early fall, there's going to be a lot of people that want to make up for lost time. You're talking about densely packed fight dates, lots of cards. Everybody wants to catch up for lost time. There's no reason Parker shouldn't see about getting himself on a card, a co-main event, with an interesting opponent, because that's what he needs right now. There's no excuses for it. That you tuned up with Alex Lapie and then you tuned up again with Shondell Winters, fine. The past is the past. We're talking about the future now. What are you going to do to get yourself back in world title contention? What are you going to do? There's no excuses for it. Maybe you get Robert Helenius on the phone. He's coming off a decent-sized win over the then-undefeated Adam Kovnowski. You know, that's the biggest win that Robert Helenius has had in recent memory. Maybe you get that guy on the phone, see about fighting that guy, because fighting that guy perhaps can push you up the ranks to where you can get back into world title contention, and that's 3 or 4 options right then and there. You're talking about a potential fight with Michael Hunter, a potential fight with the loser of Chisora versus Usyk, there's Filip Hrgovic, there's Robert Helenius, there's also Martin Bacall to consider. He's right there on the matchroom side of things. I don't see why a fight like that can't be made. Martin Bacall needs a name, and Joseph Parker needs to be involved in an interesting situation. That's an interesting situation. More interesting than Shondell Winters or Alex Lapie.
Yeah.
I don't see why they can't make a fight like that. There's also Sergey Kuzmin. He's coming off that loss to Michael Hunter. You know, Sergey, he needs to get back in the winner's bracket. He needs to try and make a statement to bounce back from that loss. And Joseph needs to be in there with somebody that's interesting, some way that's halfway decent. I happen to think that Sergey Kuzmin could fill that role. Essentially, there are ample names floating around out there in the heavyweight cosmos. Enough names that Parker's shit out of excuses here. You can't keep fighting these keep busy, tune-up kind of guys anymore.
It's enough already.
Otherwise, if you do, you are proving Dillian Whyte right. You're pissing away opportunities and squandering the time. There's no one to blame for that but yourself.